Hey, what's up? I'm John Buccigross, Solo Ed Neo. Welcome inside the NHL. Thanks so much for clicking on ESPN.com for all of your hockey needs. We love bringing it to you, and we love doing this show and talking hockey, which we're doing today with Scotty Burnside and Joe McDonald. We'll start with Scott, and then we'll hear from Joe. Our first topic, boys, is the Rangers-Islanders playoff series. Looks like it's going to happen. That's going to be fun. Great for the sport. Great for those, of course, two cities as well, Manhattan against Brooklyn. And Scotty, start with you. Let's talk about the Rangers and their offense. Of course, they trade for Eric Staal. Rick Nash has been injured. What can you give us on those two fellas if they can be impact players, especially in a first-round playoff series against a very good Islander team?
How much fun is that going to be if it happens? And you're right, John, the standings look right now with less than a month in the regular season, and we are going to see an all-New York City clash between the Islanders and the Rangers. And Eric Staal was one of the biggest names to go during the trade deadline period. Longtime captain of the Carolina Hurricanes, Stanley Cup winner, gold medal, Olympic winner. He's a leader. He's a winner. But it's been a struggle for Eric Staal this season, and his struggles really haven't eased since coming over to join his brother Mark Staal with the New York Rangers. He has, as we're chatting today, 1 goal in 7 games. Worse, 2 goals in his last 26 games. Ranger fans hope he's saving that all up for the playoffs. And I think for me, one of the fascinating parts of this is going to be, what does head coach Alain Vigneault do with Eric Staal? Where does he fit in? You mentioned Rick Nash, out for weeks with a bone bruise. Did come back. Not sure he's quite 100% just yet. But it does look like Alain Vigneault is going to give Eric Staal a chance to play with Rick Nash. And in the one early game, played with Victor Staal as well, 3 big forwards, didn't produce any points. But it's going to be interesting to see whether Nash and Eric Staal can find some chemistry. Because one thing we know about this Islander team, and having covered them in the first round last year against Washington, hard, heavy hockey, and that's what this series will be about. And even though he's not scoring now, the Rangers didn't acquire Eric Staal to pour in goals in March and the first week of April. They brought him in to make a difference in April, May, and June. So I think there's still lots of room for optimism, but it has been a struggle early on for Eric Staal in his new jersey with the New York Rangers. But I'm looking forward to seeing whether he can make an impact if he does, in fact, line up over a long period of time with Rick Nash. Lots of talent, lots of experience there. So lots of question marks, too. But we'll see how that unfolds.
Joe McDonald, I think the Islanders are maybe the most underrated team in the NHL this year, under the radar, whatever term you want to use. Goal prevention, equal Stanley Cup. You go back the last 5-6 years, you're either the best goal prevention team or the second or third. You're right there. Isles are a top 5 goal prevention team. They're a top 10 goal scoring team. John Tavares is a superstar, franchise pillar, one of the best players in the NHL. What do the Islanders need to do to beat the Rangers in a first-round playoff series?
Bucci, I agree 100%. This team is just gritty, and it's a good team, and they have kind of taken on the personality of Coach Jack Capuano. And when you look at this team going into a playoff series, especially against a team like the New York Rangers, it's going to come down to goaltending. And unfortunately, the Islanders had a little bit of a setback last week when Halak went down with that lower body injury, and he's going to miss 6 weeks. But after that game, when he got hurt against the Pittsburgh Penguins, Jack Capuano came out and said, look, we have confidence in our other 2 goalies, in Greiss and Berube. Greiss obviously is a guy who's had a lot of success this season, and he's probably going to get the majority of the ice time for the remainder of the regular season and into the playoffs. But in order for the New York Islanders to advance, especially against a team like the New York Rangers, it has to come down to goaltending. We've seen this in the past, that if a goaltender can put a team on his shoulders and carry it, they're going to have success, and Greiss probably will have to be that guy. As far as from an offensive standpoint, you look at a guy like John Tavares. He's been outstanding this year. He's been outstanding basically his entire career on the island. And now going into this postseason, the team really needs their captain to step up, because he's really carried this team in the past. And the one thing that we know about John Tavares is that if he can get on a roll, the rest of the team feeds off of that, and this team could have success. But I agree with Scotty. If the Islanders and the Rangers in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs is just going to be a phenomenal series. It's almost like it's grit with the Islanders against a more talented team with the Rangers. But I'm with you, Bucci. I'd have to go with the Islanders in this one because you just love their grit. But it will definitely come down to goaltending.
Of course, they'd love to pass the Rangers in the standings. They're a point back, but a couple games in hand. Rangers on the West Coast, although the Isles have a tough St. Patrick's Day night game in Nashville. I think the Rookie of the Year race this year, fellas, is fascinating, not only in terms of who do you think should win, but really who the top three are going to be in terms of the leading vote getters. And really, obviously, there's some philosophies involved. Should Artemi Panarin, how do you weight his rookie season, being a 24-year-old guy who's played in the KHL? Of course, other guys have played in the AHL. That's a professional hockey league as well. But it's going to be interesting. I would think it'd be the favorite, Scott Burnside. And then even as I look at my top three recently, I think Shane Gostisbehere now deserves to be in that top three, being a defenseman and the impact he's had on his team directly. We know McDavid is probably the best player, but you can't penalize him for games missed. His points per game is off the charts. Jack Eichel's played the whole season. You have to give that in consideration because guys are more tired. They're playing more. Maybe their point per game number isn't as strong because of that. What's your philosophy? The writers, of course, vote for the Rookie of the Year. What's your philosophy as you look and rate the class?
Bucci, I think you're right on. This might be among the most difficult years for rookie voters. And of course, Joey Mack and I are among that group, given the various elements that are coming into play. And you mentioned some of them. Connor McDavid is, I think, probably without any doubt, the best rookie player in the NHL this year, but missed a significant amount of time with a shoulder injury. And the award goes to the player who had the best rookie season. And for me, that means you have to play the whole season to really be considered in that final three in terms of the finalists for the Rookie of the Year. You mentioned Shane Gostisbehere, fine rookie defenseman for the Philadelphia Flyers, really keeping them in the playoff hunt. You might even consider him among your Hart Trophy candidates if the Flyers do and make the playoffs. But for me, I go back to Panarin. Tremendous season for him. He leads all rookie scorers by 14 points. Jack Eichel is number 2. Panarin's 14 points ahead of them. That's a country mile. Yes, he's 24 years old, so he's a little bit older. Yes, he did play in the Continental Hockey League. I know people make the argument, well, listen, he's playing with Patrick Kane. Anyone could do that. Not so. Joel Quenneville does not hand out spots on the NHL's top scoring line just because he feels a tremendous sense of largesse. Panarin's played there all year because he's deserved it. And for me, he is the Rookie of the Year. And the guy I will tell you about that I still think factors in, I don't know where he fits in, what about John Gibson in Anaheim? Might very well have saved the Anaheim Ducks season this year with his strong play when that team was floundering. Couldn't score. Gibson came up from the American Hockey League and really righted the ship there. Of goaltenders who played 30 or more games, he ranks number 2 with a 2.07 goals against average. He's battling now for playing time with Frederik Andersen. Both those guys are off the charts hot. So I don't know where John Gibson factors in, but a lot of interesting elements for voters as we get ready to cast our ballots in less than a month.
Yeah, and let's talk to Joe now. And if those who say Artemi Panarin's numbers are because of Patrick Kane, well, obviously, but Patrick Kane's numbers are also up because of Artemi Panarin. If you think that he's just riding his coattails, you just haven't been watching the Blackhawks play. This guy's skating, and the amount of wood he gets on one-timers that passes from Kane and others, amazing hand-eye, great sense for the game, find dead areas, heavy shot, great skater. Joe, this guy's the real deal.
Pucci, without a doubt, he's the real deal. He's been so much fun to watch. And when you look at this entire rookie class, hockey fans have been pretty spoiled this season to go up and down that list and just to see the rookies that have had an impact on their teams this season. I like to agree with Scotty quite often, but in this case, I do look at the fact that he's 24 years old. I do look at the fact that he played in the KHL. And I do look at the fact that he's playing with Patrick Kane for the entire season. Meanwhile, if you look at a guy like Jack Eichel, and I'm not just saying this because he's a Boston kid, you look at Jack Eichel and the impact that he's had in Buffalo this season as a 19-year-old kid. A year ago, he was playing collegiately at Boston University, a Hobey Baker Award winner, and now he comes in to the Sabres and he makes an impact. The thing is, with the difference between him and Connor McDavid is that McDavid, yes, didn't miss half the season. His points per game is outstanding, but McDavid didn't have the ebbs and flows that Jack Eichel has experienced this season. But I just think overall, if you look at the season that Eichel has had, he has to be in top consideration for the Calder Trophy this season.
I agree. He's got to be 2 or 3 for how he's really carried that team. He's been their best player most nights at his age. And I do believe if it's close, like you said, Joe, if it's a 24-year-old and a 19-year-old and it's nose-to-nose dead heat, I think the 18 or 19-year-old in this case should get extra consideration. That should matter. And either way, we're blessed to have this great talent in the NHL. Let's talk about Carey Price now. Obviously, some believe when he's healthy could be the best goalie in the world. That's why many thought he could be a difference maker in the Stanley Cup final. Do you play him or not play him? Scott Burnside, it seems silly to even consider to play him. What's Montreal thinking, and what's Carey Price thinking?
Honestly, this is such a difficult question. Carey Price played in only 12 games this year. Of course, the Canadiens got off to such a rocketing start. People were already talking Stanley Cup final. Was he going to repeat as the Vezina Hart Trophy winner, Ted Lindsay winner? And then all of a sudden the injuries sidelined him. The thing for Carey Price and for the Montreal Canadiens, now that he's back skating, he's working out. I saw him take a puck in the face during a workout today before we taped this. I think you have to listen to Carey Price and let him, at least in a large part, make the decision. Canadian season is done, right? They're not going to make the playoffs. I know a lot of people would say, hey, shut it down, come back in training camp. We have to consider Carey Price in this. We have to consider the World Cup of Hockey. Carey Price has already been named to Team Canada, one of the 3 goaltenders that will take the ice in Toronto for the World Cup. He is the defending gold medal goaltender for Team Canada from Sochi. He wants very much to play in that tournament in the fall. Who doesn't want to? But if you're the Montreal Canadiens, do you want him playing his first competitive hockey after weeks and weeks away at the World Cup? I think it might be more prudent if he got playing time down the stretch. Even though the season, for all intents and purposes, is a wash for the Canadiens, I think you have to consider letting Carey Price play at least a few games so he gets some game action under his belt, spends the summer rehabbing further, gets ready for the World Cup of Hockey, and then, of course, the regular season after that. But it's a difficult one to come to grips with because there's so much at stake for this Montreal Canadiens team. I mean, the joke is he maybe should have won the Hart Trophy again this year because the Canadiens season went down the tubes as soon as he went hurt.
Yeah, 9th worst record in the league. They really can't improve their least probability in terms of a lottery much more. So, Joe, I think in this situation, I think Carey Price earns this respect. He seems like a reasonable dude. I would ask him, do you want to play a couple of games? Because if he does it and his head's not really in it, that could lead to another injury. Who knows? Some AHL fella who's up just, rushes the net and injures him again, depending on who you play. I got to think I'd ask Carey Price because I want a guy with a frame of mind who is hungry to play a game. Otherwise, why have him in there?
Butchie, I think he's definitely hungry to play a game, but in my opinion, they should just shut him down. Shut him down, not worry about the rest of the season. Have him get ready for the World Cup. In training camp next fall. And the one thing is we've talked about, well, in order to get ready for the World Cup, you have to play some games. Well, it's hard to simulate a game in a practice. But when you talk about Team Canada and getting ready for the World Cup, he's going to be practicing against some of the best players in the world. So that's pretty close to game ready in the shots and the pucks that he'll be facing in August, in September. But for right now, for the health, mentally, physically, emotionally, for both Carey Price and the Montreal Canadiens, they should just shut him down. He is the best goaltender in the world. I'm sure he will get back to that once he's 100% healthy. But like you said, John, why take a chance putting him in a game, somebody crashing the net, him getting hurt, and then it's entirely a different setback for Price and the Canadiens. So my opinion, just shut him down, call it a season, focus on getting him 100% healthy, like I said, mentally, physically, and emotionally.
That's a good point, Joe. There'll be some high-tempo practices at that World Cup training camp, and I'm sure he'll see some of the best players in the NHL. That's good hockey talk with Scott Burnside and Joe McDonald. Read all about them on ESPN.com as we finish out this regular season and the Stanley Cup playoffs begin in a couple of weeks. Thanks so much, folks. We'll see you next time on Inside the NHL here on ESPN.com.